Welcome back to Unknown Fantasy Origins, the show where we explore the backstories behind concepts seen in TV, film, and gaming. Viewer discretion is advised. Some of the stories you may see on this show are far more disturbing than they appear on TV. Chances are that before watching this video, you've heard and read about the infamous Jack the Ripper on TV shows, movies, and countless books. Of most recent years, the most popular film adaptation was from 2001 starring Johnny Depp and Heather Graham called From Hell, based on the graphic novels with the same namesake. Johnny Depp's character plays a police officer investigating the murders of a serial killer in Whitechapel. While the movie identified a surgeon as the culprit, the real identity of Jack the Ripper remains a mystery to this day. Despite similarities in the stories, Hollywood will often fabricate specifics for the screen and leave out other details for the sake of time. Time and research actually brings new evidence into the picture. Other alleged victims. Victims have been possibly linked to Jack the Ripper, separate from the original 5. Let's take a look at the real case file for Jack the Ripper, focusing on the 5 recognized victims. London was different back in 1888. Immigration brought a swell of people to the area of Whitechapel in London's East End. The flux caused living conditions to worsen and actually create a new underclass. The poverty caused crime to go up, alcoholism to spread, and women to resort to prostitution. Racism and anti-Semitism chaos caused the police to intervene, and the area to be seen as immoral. The insane amount of coverage that the Jack the Ripper killings received only strengthened this immoral view. The police studied the Whitechapel murders from April 1888 to February of 1891, the most gruesome belonging to those of Jack. Born in 1845, Ann Nichols married at 16, bearing 5 children. The marriage eventually broke up, leading Mary to resort to prostitution and no support. She was driven to alcohol and stealing to make ends meet. She was last seen by her roommate Emily Holland on the corner of Osborne and Whitechapel, claiming that she had earned enough money that night to pay for her bed 3 times over, but had spent the money on booze. At 3:40 a.m., a cart driver named Charles found Mary Ann in front of a stable entrance in Bucks Row. Robert, another cart driver, noticed her as well. They weren't sure if she was dead or just unconscious. They saw that her skirt was up, so they pulled it down and looked for a police officer. Once they had found someone, they left the scene. Joined by 2 more police officers, they learned that no one had seen or heard anything suspicious before she had been discovered. A doctor determined that she had only been dead about 30 minutes. Her throat was slashed left to right twice, a deep wound in her abdomen, incisions across her abdomen, and about 3 to 4 cuts on her right side made from a violently downward motion. Lack of a huge blood spill actually showed she had been killed elsewhere and brought here. The cause of death was the slash on her throat, while the rest was done in less than 5 minutes after she died. As police investigated, the name Leather Apron emerged. Descriptions of the leather apron actually stemmed from Jewish stereotypes, leading to the arrest of John Pizer. He was known as Leather Apron because he made leather footwear. Because they had no evidence against him and his alibis checked out, he was later released. Unfortunately, the papers kept naming him as the murderer. Ann Nichols was later buried on the 6th in City of London Cemetery. In 1996, the cemetery actually gave her a new grave marker. 2 days after Ann was buried, Annie Chapman was found dead. Born in 1842, she married at 27 to John Chapman, and they had 3 children. After 2 of the children died, they split. Once her income stopped coming in when her husband suddenly died, Annie had to resort to working many jobs to cover her income, including prostitution. The last person to see her alive was Miss Elizabeth Long. She saw her around 5:30 talking to a man who was a little taller than her, dark hair, foreign, shabby genteel appearance, a deerstalker, and a dark overcoat. Tatman was discovered at 6 a.m. by John Davis. She was near a doorway in a backyard. John Richardson, who owns the property, didn't see anyone around 5 a.m. when he went outside, and someone next door said they heard voices and the sound of someone hitting the fence from the other side. The murder was quickly linked to Mary Ann's. Annie's throat had been slashed, and abdominal wounds were made using a similar blade. She was killed around 5:30 a.m. Her body had been disemboweled and thrown over her shoulders, and part of her uterus was missing. But this time, she was killed where she had been found. She was buried in Manor Park Cemetery in a secret and private funeral. Her grave is now gone, having been buried over in later years, but in 2008, a plaque was set in memoriam. The papers continued to run stories about Leather Apron, and the police continued to arrest anyone who appeared suspicious. This was also when the Dear Boss letter arrived, signed with the famous name Jack the Ripper. The letter reads, "Dear Boss, I keep on hearing the police have caught me, but they won't fix me just yet. I have laughed when they look so clever and talk about being on the right track. The joke about Leather Apron gives me real fits. I am down on whores and shan't quit ripping them till I do get buckled. Grand work the last job was. I gave the lady no time to squeal. How can they catch me now? I love my work and want to start again. You will soon hear of me with my funny little games. I saved some of the proper red stuff in a ginger beer bottle over the last job to write with, and it went thick like glue and I can't use it. Red ink is fit enough, I hope. Ha ha! The next job I do, I shall clip the lady's ears off and send to the police officers just for jolly, wouldn't you? Keep this letter back till I do a bit more work, then give it out straight. My knife's so nice and sharp, I want to get to work right away if I get a chance. Good luck. Yours truly, Jack the Ripper. Don't mind me giving the trade name. P.S. Wasn't good enough to post this because I got all the red ink off my hands. Curse it. No luck yet. They say I'm a doctor now. Ha ha! The police played it off as a hoax until part of it turned out to be true. Elizabeth Stride was different. She became a prostitute at 22. She later married John Stride, but that didn't last. She worked a few other jobs, but was prostituting on the night that she died. She was last seen dressed in all black with a client around 12:35. She was discovered around 1 a.m. on September 30th by the steward of the Workers' Club. His horse was spooked, and only by lighting a match could he see the body, still oozing blood. Despite many people being around, no one had seen anyone entering the area. Stride's death, however, only matches the previous two deaths because of the throat slashing. Similarities to the time, place, and method led the police to believe that the killer was interrupted. Another death would happen less than an hour later, causing a panic. 2 murders in a single night. Elizabeth was laid to rest in the East London Cemetery to a sparse funeral. The second murder of the night was Catherine Eddowes. After abandoning her earlier family for a new man, Catherine turned to prostitution to pay her rent. On the night she died, she found herself drunk in the street and taken into police custody. Shortly after being released, between 1:30 and 1:45 a.m., she was murdered in Mitre Square. Catherine was butchered, her throat was slashed, her intestines ripped out, her face was cut up even all the way through her eyelids. Her ear was severed, and her entire kidney and part of her uterus were removed. The cut ear matched the first Jack the Ripper letter that the police received. They also received a postcard dubbed Saucy Jack. The postcard mentioned the murder double event and was sent before the murders had even happened. The postcard says, I was not codding dear old boss when I gave you the tip. You'll hear about Saucy Jack's work tomorrow. Double event this time. Number 1 squealed a bit, couldn't finish straight off. Had not got time to get ears off for police. Thanks for keeping the last letter back till I got to work again. Jack the Ripper. Eddowes was buried in City of London Cemetery, receiving a plaque in 1996. About a week later, the From Hell package arrived, containing a letter and half of a kidney. Mr. Lusk, sir, I send you half the kidney I took from one woman. Preserved it for you. Other piece I fried and ate it. It was very nice. I may send you the bloody knife that I took it out of, if you only wait a while longer. Signed, Catch Me When You Can, Mr. Lusk. This letter was different. He did not sign his name as Jack the Ripper. The spelling and grammar were obviously bad, but oddly enough, they included the silent K in knife and the silent H in while. Its hasty appearance actually gives scholars the idea that this was a delusional man. The police printed the letters hoping that someone might recognize the handwriting, but to no avail. November 9th, around 10 a.m., Mary Jane Kelly was found mutilated and disemboweled in her room just off of Dorset Street. Not much is known about Mary Jane except that her extreme poverty at 25 led her to prostitution. The landlord's assistant was sent to fetch Kelly's rent and discovered the gruesome sight. This time the murderer had more time to operate. Kelly was found naked, her throat slashed all the way to the spine. You can even see the grooves in her vertebrae. Her abdomen and thighs had been gouged away, her abdomen completely emptied out, her breasts had been removed, and the rest of her body had been completely mutilated. She was finally laid to rest in St. Patrick Roman Catholic Cemetery. Kelly was considered the final victim, as months passed with no murder, and the investigation began to wind down. Over the course of the investigation, over 2,000 were questioned, 300 investigated, and over 80 people were arrested. The story became a legend, even becoming a child's scary story, their boogeyman. He evolved from being a man in everyday clothes to that of a gentleman. The figure has shown up in TV, film, and books as people try to research the identity of Jack the Ripper. There have been countless suspects, but little results. Surprisingly, the most notable story comes from 2014 that involved DNA evidence. Russell Edwards claimed in his book, naming Jack the Ripper, that a shawl that he bought at an auction was actually brought to the scene of the crime by Jack himself. Infrared showed blood spatter stains that are consistent with a throat slashing. There also appeared to be what looked like semen stains that could be tested for DNA. The sample was so old that they tested it using mitochondrial DNA testing. When compared to Catherine's 3 times great-granddaughter, Kelly Miller, there was a perfect match. Now, the type of semen DNA appeared to have come from the urethra during ejaculation. Tested against a female descendant of Aaron Kosminski, who was a main suspect in the murders, there was another perfect match. It appears that Aaron Kosminski was Jack the Ripper. The chief constable believed that Aaron was a suspect, while many disagreed. Aaron was a prisoner and died in 1919 in incarceration in Leavesden Asylum for Imbeciles from gangrene. So do you believe we finally found the identity of Jack the Ripper? Can you trust that DNA evidence? Could we be framing the wrong man? Or do we finally have an answer after all these years? Whether you believe or not is up to you. Whether you've learned something today is up to me. Please stay tuned for the next episode of Unknown Fantasy Origins. My name is Christy A. Bell, and this was Jack the Ripper. You will soon hear of me and my funny little games.